And welcome to the Restaurant Coach Podcast. It is the cure for the common restaurant. I am so honored. This is an exciting guest to have here today. Kasey Anton is here. She is the author of Profit First for Restaurants. Kasey, this is such an important topic for restaurant owners. What inspired you? And well, first of all, tell people a little bit about you, about your backstory, and a little bit about what kind of inspired you to start your company, Spark, and specifically focus on the restaurant industry.
Yes. Hi, Donald. Thank you for having me here. And I would love to tell that in as brief as I can, because I could go on and on. But here's the deal. So I spent over the first half of my life in restaurants. That's all I ever wanted to do, was just restaurants, right? My parents did not want me to major that in college. They thought that was it was a difficult industry to be in. And so because they were helping me pay for school, I got a more narrow degree in communications and business from the University of Rhode Island. And then, of course, the day that I graduated, I went and got a job at the Chart House restaurant in Newport, Rhode Island. At the time, the Chart House restaurant was a bigger chain. I know there's still a few left, but it was one of the high-end steakhouses. They had locations in all of these kind of resort areas. And their management program was renowned at the time. It was called CHAMP, for Chart House Administrative Management Program. You actually had to apply to get into it. It was like it was like a big deal. So even though here I am with this Bachelor of Arts degree and something else, I'm like, no, I'm still doing restaurants, Mom and Dad. Sorry. So I got this job, and you start as a dishwasher. They moved me to Boston. So that's how I ended up in Boston at the Long Wharf Chart House. And you work double shifts, 6 to 7 days a week easily. And you prep fish and lettuce and learn how to butcher. And then you come back at night and you manage, or you do everything. You shuck oysters. So it was a great experience, but it was just a lot of hours. And then I learned, and then I discovered Boston and all these small boutique restaurants. I'm like, oh, give me some of that. So after being at the Chart House for a couple of years, I got a job as a general manager at a small little boutique restaurant in an up and coming neighborhood in Boston that actually won Food and Wine Best Restaurant of the Year when I was there. It was in Bon Appetit, what else? The Wine Spectator, a bunch of things. So I've had a lot of restaurant experience. Everything was great. I loved every second of it. But then it culminated in my owning a restaurant. So I had a couple of partners, and we owned a restaurant in Boston called Bomboa. And we had that for 7 years. I ended up selling it in 2006. At the same time that was happening, my business partners were kind of going in different directions. I had just gotten married and just had my first child. So it was like a whole new chapter was opening. We sold the restaurant, thank God, because if it lasted any longer, we would have had to close it. So we sold it, got out of it. And then I thought to myself, now what? Because now I'm home with an infant, and I went from working, 80, 90 hours a week, going full steam, to being at home every day with an infant, thinking there'd be no transitional, issue for me. But it was challenging. It was challenging. So I'm at home, and I'm like, all right, I can't just stay here, because no. So what am I going to do? I've only done restaurants. I knew I couldn't go back into the industry the way I was in it and have an infant, right? So I'm like, well, what else could I do? And when I took stock, it was like, oh, I got really good at the numbers. Like I got really, really good. I surrounded myself with bookkeepers and CPAs over the years of being in the restaurant, because I really had to figure out how to make $1 become $10. Like that's what I was looking for. So I just learned the books inside and out. So I'm like, oh, okay. I know QuickBooks and I know accounting. Let me see if I can do that for some small restaurants, a couple of days a week while I'm home or whatever. So I put the word out, and I got a couple of restaurants just from my colleagues in the industry. And then I'm like, oh, I kind of like this. And this is fun. Like, I like this. So then I joined this networking group. It was called a BNI group, a Business Networking International, down by me, right? I'm thinking, I'm going to try this thing out. I'll never forget that first day I showed up. I'm like, oh, this is Kasey, and I have this bookkeeping service. I'm not even kidding, like 10 people lined up at the end of the meeting waiting to talk to me about my services. And they weren't in the restaurants. Wow. So these were contractors, painters, lawyers, real estate agents. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I'm thinking, I don't know if I can do this, but I think 2 + 2 = 4 no matter where you go. And I was I was a little bit like, "Let
Usually,
me."
usually it
Right?
does.
I was
Yeah.
hoping, but I knew nothing but restaurants in my life up until this point. I knew nothing but restaurants. So I'm like, "Okay," but I wanted the work and I was kinda greedy. I'm like, "Let me see if I can make this work." And it turns out the math is the same.
Yeah.
So I ended up growing Spark because of that BNI group and just my colleagues in the restaurant
Oh, very
industry.
cool.
I ended up just having so many within 3 months, I think I had 25 clients. It was like crazy because
Wow.
people need this type of help.
It's funny you were in Boston. I was in Boston about the same time. I used to live in Boston.
I did not know that.
Actually, I used to work for Wolfgang Puck. I was a chef for Wolfgang Puck in the early 2000s, and I opened up the Museum of Science, the Wolfgang Puck at the Museum of Science there.
Oh my god,
So
that's
I was there for a long
amazing.
time, and then I left Wolfgang Puck, and I started my own consulting company in Boston, and I used to do I did consulting for quite a few restaurants, some stuff in the North End. I did the Barking Crab. So
Oh god,
yeah,
that's a classic.
that's a classic place, yeah.
North
So
End Consulting. Woo,
I
okay.
know. Little places, they're not open anymore. A small little hole in the wall place called Carmen's. It was a beautiful right next to the Paul Revere
I
house.
know it. That
Oh,
was
it was
one of
a
my
great
favorites, to be honest with you, and I don't love the North End, but I did love
I
that
love
place.
that place was awesome.
Mhm.
Great little place. Small restaurant, like what, 10
Food
tables,
was
10 seats,
so
10
good.
tables.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
tiny.
super small, yeah. But the food was so good.
Yep.
So do me a favor, can you break down the core principles of the profit first system and how specifically it can really benefit restaurant owners?
Yeah, so I'd say that the easiest and best way for me to describe it to the listeners, if they're not familiar with Profit First,
Mhm.
is it really is just all about putting intention behind every single dollar that comes into your business and giving it a job. It's as simple as that because when you don't, which most people don't, who aren't using Profit First, right? If you're not putting intention behind literally every penny that comes into your business,
Mm.
it's just like to me, like the visual is like you think of a clothes dryer and all the money is just like going in circles, the dryer's on. And when the bill comes in, you open the door, you grab a fistful, it comes out, and you go pay that bill. Like
That's it.
that's how I feel like
That's
that's how
it.
I
That's
was running
it. Yeah.
restaurant for years. That's how I'd seen it as I managed other places for years. It was just there was no intention that, oh, this is due. Oh, is there money? Oh, okay, let me pay it. It was like that. But there's no intention behind that method at
Mhm.
all. And so therefore it just becomes this free for all every day. And it's just out of control. So when I learned about Profit First, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then they make you before you become a Profit First professional that I am now, like you have to do it in your business first. And I was one of the original, I was in the first 50 people. And they monitor you while you do it in your business. And I will say this, like at the time, I have a service-based business, right? Like I
Yeah,
don't sell stuff. Like I have and I was doing well. Like I was doing well anyway. And I still had a
yeah,
team and I was doing well. But when I implemented Profit First, because I had to become
yeah.
certified,
Right,
it
yep.
transformed. Like I was doing well. After that, I was whoa, whoa. I'll have to say, it's like I was like, oh my God, I just did what? Like it was my business skyrocketed in every way imaginable, not just in sales and the referrals, but
Mhm.
in profitability, in owner's pay. There
Wow.
was a point where I was like, oh my God,
Yeah,
that's me. That I'm supposed to take that money? Like what?
yeah.
It was crazy. So, yeah, so, like, when I did it in my business, it's just about
Mhm.
it's just about being intention, and with the restaurant industry specifically, because it is all about, like, that
Mm.
windfall of Friday, Saturday nights that's
Yeah.
gonna hit the account on Monday or Tuesday.
I can make
Let
it.
Yep.
I
You're
can
just
make it.
barely
Woo!
coming in hot, right? And then all of a sudden, you open up that bank account maybe Tuesday morning, you see all those weekend deposits hit. You're like, bang, now I'm gonna
Wow.
pay some bills, and then you spend all the money because
Yeah, and
it's
then what's
there.
nothing left for you, yeah, and you're like, "I worked all hard this weekend for nothing," right?
Yeah, there's nothing
Yeah.
left, but you're like, "Oh, damn. All right, well, Saturday's coming up again," and then it
Mhm.
happens all over again because there's no intention behind every
Yeah.
dollar. So that's really the principle that I hit home.
Yeah, I kind of really relate the profit first principle to that book, The Richest Man in Babylon, where
Oh, I
he
have not read it, but I've heard of it.
Oh, yeah, where he actually tells it's a story of these 2 guys, it's like a fable, and he talks about how this one guy became these 2 guys went to, grew up together. One guy became really, really wealthy, and they meet years later and say, "How come you're so wealthy? We went to the same schools, we got the same education." He goes, "I pay myself first." He goes, I take out my money and I put it aside for me first. And that's, to me, that's the whole beauty of the profit first, is that take your profit out first. So many times when restaurants look at a P&L, again, we run it from top to bottom.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What if you reverse it? It's the same thing like with hiring. Most times we hire for skill and we fire for personality. So what if you reverse that? What if you hire for personality and then train the skill?
Oh,
Same
preach.
thing with
Absolutely.
profit. Yeah. Same thing with profit first. What if you, instead of waiting until the end of the P&L to take your profit out, what if you take your profit out first? And then it's just like a budget. If I take out my profit first, now this is all the money I have to spend, you're a little more conscientious of how you spend your money.
Oh yeah. And then and then 1,000 other amazing things happen, because if you take your profit first, which profit is a choice, and I don't think anyone's been taught that, right?
Whoa.
Nobody's taught that.
Say that. As I go to hashtag, I would say hashtag write this shit down. Profit is a hashtag write this shit down. Profit is a choice. Everyone write that shit down. Profit is a choice.
Profit is a choice. It is not a happy accident. That is what I say over and over again. And because that's what happens. People think like profit is like this random number on the bottom of a P&L that may or may not be good. It's like a report card. Like it's just, no, like profit should be money in a bank account that you point to. Like, hey, there's my profit. You should see it. It should be there. And it's a choice that you make.
That's mine.
And so I love that. I write about this so passionately, I think, in the book, because it's for any business, right? If you choose to if every business were taught that, hey, you're going to open a business, you're going to have some sales, you're going to sell this thing, and the money's going to come to the account, and then you're going to take your profit first. And it's not 100%. I mean, I wish it was, but it's not. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10%. It's whatever your business model should be. You set that aside, and then you operate on what's left. How many businesses would be thriving today? Would not, it's unbelievable, because profit serves just so many aspects in a business that a common business owner doesn't know. So
I will tell you right now, like if you're listening to this and you want to implement this thing, remember, you start small. It's just like when people have high prime cost and they have to like control their prime cost. You're not going to make big jumps. You're not going to radically cut your prime cost. You're going to do it like a couple percent at a time to start narrowing it down and make a plan to start narrowing it. Same thing with profit first. You start with a small percent to get used to it, 2-3%, and then you work your way up to where you want to be. But it's not like I'm going to take 15% out right now.
Oh yeah,
because you might not be there yet. So you start small and you work your way up.
Yep.
What are some of the common financial pitfalls that you see restaurant owners fall into, and how does your approach help them navigate these challenges?
Yeah, I think I would go back to my Saturday night analogy, because that is what I find the majority of restaurant owners, when they're in a struggle, it's because they base all of their spending. So really, they base their business off of Saturday night sales.
That's it.
Even though logically Saturday only comes once a week, right? So, but if you're building a business to have expenses around that sale night, that one night of sales, and no other night lives up to that, you're going to constantly be in the hole. And the thing is, even though it sounds so, I think, like simple and logical for me to say it, but I didn't realize that when I had my restaurants, or when I was managing all the ones before the one I owned. Like you just don't think that way. You think that every night's going to be Saturday night, believe it or not. And you build your business and you build the expenses and all the things you want to do around that. And that just gets you into trouble. The other thing that I noticed, and I thought maybe it was just me, but as I interviewed and talked to so many different restaurateurs, as I wrote the book and just the ones that I've known in my life, is that debt is looked at very differently by small business owners, and especially restaurateurs, in that it's almost like something that you win, like gambling. It seems like, oh my God, I just got approved for that loan. Oh yeah, let's go. And it's like, no, I mean, but I was one of them. So I'm not even trying to shame anyone. I remember my business partners like high-fiving as we got another one of those ridiculously high interest loans, just because it was a Band-Aid. But the thing was, why did we need that money? We weren't looking at that. Why did we need the loan? And then what did it really mean to have to pay it back? Because how do you pay back debt? Through profit. There is no other way to pay back debt without profit. So if you're not profitable in the first place, then you go out and you get a loan because you're not profitable. And now you have to pay back the loan, but there's no profit to pay it back, but you're still paying it back. You have to backfill more debt to be able to pay the first loan. And it is a snowball to hell of debt And I see this happen more often than not. And so I think just understanding debt and how it needs to be paid back. And it's not, I'm not saying that debt is terrible, although in
No.
an ideal world, it would be great to be debt free. Sometimes debt is super necessary,
Mhm.
but how people engage with it, plan for it, and especially plan to pay it back, because again, it's profit that pays that. You got to make sure you have it, is a whole new ball game. And I just think that's something, that's a pitfall that restaurateurs fall into all the time. And I wouldn't expect them to understand it, but if, certainly if they read the chapter in the book, but if they can just listen to this podcast and understand that debt is a whole thing that you really do have to wrap your head around a little bit more, or you're just going to get into more trouble.
I call it the gambler's fallacy.
Oh,
Gamblers always think that, that I'll win this next hand and I'll get all my money back. Same thing. We start taking out those loans. You have this gambler's fallacy. You think that this loan is going to help me. I'll get profitable with this loan. This loan's going to do it.
Exactly.
This loan is the one thing that's going to make me profitable. Not running my business more effectively is going to make me profitable, but this loan is going to help me. And I just need this loan to get the pressure off me, and then I'll get profit, and then I'll be fine.
That's exactly right. That is the exact mentality. And without actually diagnosing the problem why you needed that loan in the first place, it's just going to keep happening and it gets worse. So I think that's probably the number one pitfall that I see. And then there's the other ones. There's like, the chef, not doing proper menu costing, a chef
number
thinking,
one thing. I'm always shocked. I'll speak at audiences like 1,000 people in the room, restaurant owners, and I'll say, raise your hand, everyone in the room, who's costed out your menu down to the penny? And 5% raise their hand. That's it. I'm like,
they're being honest. Okay.
I'm shocked. I mean, totally shocked how many people don't cost out their menu, know their food cost.
Oh yeah, because there was one of my first restaurant clients I worked with. He was swearing up, I run 30%, I run 30%, and then we would actually do the numbers, like legit the money part, and I'm like, dude, you're at 42%. No, I'm not. Well, you are. Like, here's I'm showing you, like, this is the math, this is the money, this is the invoice. Tell me where I'm going wrong, and it would just be like, oh, you must be wrong, and I'll spend some time digging into your reports. Okay, let me know what you find, and then they never come back with anything because I know that I'm not wrong. It's not, it's not simple. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not hard to figure out. And then they go on and they they have their 30%, and maybe because in their head they're like, oh, I'm going to charge $35 for the steak, and I bought it for this, and there you go.
Yeah, not thinking like,
what about the bread service? What about salt and pepper? What about the garnish? What about all the other things that go into it? They're not thinking about it, and that can add up. I mean, it does.
Or worse, they go on Google and they'll say, what's a good food cost for a restaurant? And Google will say like 30 to 34%. And then they'll call me and say, hey, Donald, I get these calls every month. Hey, my food cost is 30%. Is that good? And I'll say, I don't know. And they go, what do you mean you don't know? Aren't you the restaurant coach? I go, yeah, let me ask you a question. What's your theoretical food cost? And they go, I don't know. I say, that's the problem. But you see, if your theoretical food cost is 28, then 30% is a pretty good food cost. You should run about 2% above theoretical. But if your theoretical is 21, now you got a problem.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you're leaving so many restaurants leave so much money on the table by not understanding that gap between theoretical and actual food costs and working consistently to close that gap.
Exactly.
That's the biggest problem I find. Yeah.
Yep.
So when you're looking around, and you talk a lot in your book about a business model mastery, and especially about understanding and mastering business models, what do you think are like some of the key components of a successful restaurant business model? Accounting is number one. Knowing your costs, number two.
Knowing your numbers, yeah.
What else?
I would say that a successful business model is going to be modeled after your break even. And this is what I mean by that. This is where, because that's kind of like the starting point, your break even, and that includes everything, right? Like, what do you need to bring in and pay? Like, what does that look like? What do you absolutely need to do every day or any day of the week to just break even? And is that a walk in the park? Is that an easy, like, will you do that? Because that's where you need to start with your business model is what's the lowest sale I can go sales wise, right? What's the lowest I can go before I start to panic? Like, what is that? And what I find so often, especially with people coming to me because they want to start up a restaurant and they consult on that, or ones that have been upside down for so long they can't see the forest through the trees type thing, and they don't understand it, is that when we drill down, we're like, okay, well, you needed to, your restaurant, you're 1,000 square foot restaurant needs to bring in $5,000 a day in sales. What's it been doing? Oh, 1,200. Okay.
Yeah.
We need to understand that. So I think I start the book by saying, I feel like, my days are filled with talking people out of starting restaurants all day long. And it is, because they'll come to me with,
True.
I want to start a food truck. Great. I love food trucks.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's back engineer it. How much money you want to make? Oh, I want to make 150 grand a year. Oh,
wow.
Okay. Well,
That's a couple $1 million food truck.
Oh, it is. And how are we going to do that? And we keep going backwards. So how many tacos? Oh,
with a $10 guest check average, that's a lot of tacos.
Yeah, that's it. And we'll be like, okay, do you think that you can service 10,000 people a day? I mean, logistically, do you think that's actually going to work by yourself? Because you can't afford. So it's really like chiseling away. Oh, you know what it is? I just heard this story in this book. I don't know if you've read it yet. It's called 10X is easier than 2X.
Oh, it's a great book. Yeah. Dr. Benjamin Hardy.
Yes. So I have not finished it, but I've started. I love it.
Yeah, it's a great book, actually.
It's so good. One of the opening stories is about Michelangelo and the story of the statue of David. And when he was asked, when Michelangelo was asked years later, like, how did you do it? How did you bring this David to life? Like, he's like real life. He just said, that was simple. I stripped away everything that wasn't David. And it was just such a pure statement. Like, if you just go back to your restaurant thinking of the statue of David and chisel away anything that isn't just that's your business model. That's the core. What does it need to sell to sustain? And be gut okay with that number. Because if you're not, don't I hope it gets better. Like it's
actually one of my favorite quotes from Michelangelo is that one. And I use it a lot for restaurants. I say my favorite quote, Michelangelo, is, I saw the angel in the marble and I chiseled until I set it free.
Oh,
that's like my favorite quote. It's like, I say, that's your life. Your life is like that marble, and every day you're just chiseling away until you get the life you want. That's it.
I have not heard that, and I love it.
That's my favorite. I'm a quote freak. I love quotes.
I probably.
My other favorite quote for restaurant owners is from Mario Andretti, and the quote is, "This is perfect for restaurant owners. If everything seems under control, you're just not going fast enough."
Oh, that's another
my other favorite quote for restaurant owners.
Write these down.
Everything seems under control. You're just not going fast enough.
I like that one a lot.
Yeah. So you talk a lot about falling back in love with your business, and you encourage entrepreneurs, especially, to fall in love with their business. Can you elaborate on why this emotional connection is so critical for success?
Yeah, I definitely can. It's interesting that you asked this question, because when I kind of implemented that theme throughout the book and have it, a chapter on culture and internal, external culture and things like that, my editor, and I had a couple, and the editor was like, this doesn't really, this isn't accounting. There's no numbers with that. Like, that's like a separate book. I'm like, okay. And I went to go take it out. Like, all right, maybe I should write a separate book about love in the restaurant industry. But then I was like, no, then the book was like bare to me. Like, it didn't make any sense to me. Like, the math made sense, but the whole thing didn't work for me anymore. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I'm bringing it back in. So I just tried it a different way, because here's why I find it to be so incredibly important. And we're going to go back to quotes. There's like that Maya Angelou quote. Everyone sees it. People will forget what you said. They'll forget what you did. They'll never forget how they made you feel, right?
Yeah.
So to bring that back to your question, like, have you ever, even gone to a restaurant, or even like this morning, I went and got my coffee at a local, like, little coffee shop. And like, the barista is just not having a good morning, right? Have you ever had that? Like, you could tell.
I love that they're having a really bad day. Yeah,
they're just like, and that's everyone has bad days, but like in the service industry, I don't want to feel that from you. And I feel like
your negative energy. No.
If you as the leader, the owner, the head, the front face, whatever you want to say, of your restaurant are feeling like that shitty barista, like having a bad day, if you're not Disney World all the time, people are going to feel and sense that. Not even just your employees, which we'll just start there, because then that just emanates off of them onto the clients, but the guests, it will infiltrate every part of your business. And that, I think that also seems like a simple thing to say, but I see it all the time, because a business owner is a restaurant owner especially, they're so busy, all the things, there's a million moving parts, and they're not like, oh, no one cares how I feel. What do they care if I'm in a bad, like they're thinking that nobody's affected, but trust me, they're affected. Everybody is affected. And it comes out through your employees, into the food, into the glass, into every part of your business. And there's just an energy there, without sounding woo, because I don't mean to, but there is definitely a negative energy there that your guests will feel even before they enter your door. I guarantee you they will feel it. And if they're not feeling good, why would you come first to mind when they're thinking about the next place they're going to go out to eat? Like, why would they? They're not. They might not be able to pinpoint it and say, I'm not going back there because my server was in a bad mood. Like they might, but they might not be able to say that.
No.
But they'll just know when they're thinking, oh, let's go out to eat this week. Where do we want to go? It's just not going to come first of mind because of the way you made them feel, whether you knew it or you didn't. So if you're a business owner and you can really fall in love or back in love, like, let's face it, nobody opens a restaurant because they want to start a business. I mean, if they did, they should start any other business other than the restaurant business, right? People start restaurants because they're building a dream, and that dream comes from passion and love and just an enthusiasm like no other in any other industry that I work in. And so you have to maintain and keep that in order to be great at it. Otherwise, you're just going to wither on the vine.
I would say hashtag write this shit down. Your vibe attracts your tribe. Your vibe attracts your tribe.
Ooh, another good one. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always say culture flows down, doesn't flow up. You are the epicenter of culture in your restaurant. Your energy, your vibe, your core values infiltrate and permeate your team, and that flows down to the guest experience. So if your vibe is off, your team's vibe is off, which means the guest experience is off.
Yep. And that is not an opinion. That is a fact.
That's a fact. Mm-hmm. That is not an opinion. That is a fact. Hashtag facts.
There it is.
We got a lot of hashtags today. Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So let's talk about some sustainable growth strategies for small business owners who are just starting out. What are some foundational steps that you would say ensure sustainable growth? Number one, we know break even, right?
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah. So it would definitely be to implement the profit first cash management system right away. As a matter of fact,
right away.
Here, so right before I got on this call with you, I was speaking to a couple of gentlemen out of Brooklyn who are about to open up a cafe, and they read the book and they're great. And they're wondering like, well, when should we do it? Because it's an investment to work with us, for us to do it. And we're happy to do it with you. There is an investment. It's a small cafe. It's, not going to do huge money. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, I wrote the book. So like, technically you can just, take the book and implement it. But if you really want the coaching behind it and consulting, we can certainly, work with you for an engagement period. But, just know it's an investment. But the whole point is start the foundation now. Because if you start now, like knowing like, okay, here's my income account, and I'm gonna have my point of sale point to that. So I know my money is gonna pile up in that account. And then my next account, maybe that's gonna be my sales tax, my meals tax. Because let's not screw with that, because that's not your money. Okay. It's not your money. You're a trustee of it for the state or, wherever. So you need to just take that off the top and move it aside so that you never have to worry about meals tax compliance, because it is not fun. There's never a winner other than the state.
That's true.
Just don't mess with it. And I just see it's so common. It's such a common mistake that people think it's their money. So I would do that. Okay. And then the next thing I would do is, just to start with a baby step, I would probably have them either do a payroll or a COGS account, or maybe both if they're feeling sassy. Just to give intention behind that money. If you're running, a 30% payroll and you want to make sure, then hey, transfer 30 cents on every dollar to that account. And that's your payroll. So when your payroll sweep comes out, it should cover it. And if it doesn't, what happens? You got to cover it from somewhere. But now there's an issue with payroll immediately because you didn't have enough money to cover it. Guess what? You're not running at a 30% payroll, are you? You're running more. And now you know where to spend your time figuring out your scheduling, etc. And the same tactic applies to the food and beverage, the COGS account, right? Yeah. If you think you're running a combined 30, 32, 35%, and you move that money over, and then you sit down to go write out your checks to pay the vendors, if there's not enough money in there, well, then guess what? That's not the cost that you're running. And now you know where you need to spend your time going to fix. Right. Menu prices, whatever it is, that's what you need to do. What I love about this system is that it bubbles up to the surface immediately any issues that you're having, whether it's payroll's too high, food and beverage costs too high, whatever it is, it bubbles it up to the surface so that you can fix it immediately rather than wait till the books are done and they're closed and this accountant looks at it and then you find time to meet with them and then maybe you look at them, maybe you don't, who knows? But now 2 months have gone by when you could have known something 2 months ago that you could have fixed, right? And it could be a simple $1 menu increase or whatever it is. Somebody leaves, goes home an hour early on the schedule. So that's what I love, is just setting up accounts wherever, I would say, wherever you think, you, the restaurateur, think that you might be a big cost for you, whether it's payroll or food and beverage or both. Set that money aside, put the intention there and start there.
Very, very cool. That's perfect. No, and you can see how the profit first kind of system actually helps you stay in alignment with your budgets and also with your COGS that you're trying to hit. Because that's another thing. For most restaurants, they either have, in their prime cost problem, they either have a food cost or a labor problem. And nowadays, a lot of times it's labor, because they're not managing overtime, they're not managing clock in, clock outs. Team just kind of does what they want, and it's like, and they have this certain set, or they think in their mind that their labor is going to be this, but then when the payroll comes around, it's like, wow, what happened?
Oh yeah,
it's like, yep. Oh, how did that happen? I didn't see that coming, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, I see that all the time. And then the thing is, the restaurateur's response is like, well, I needed everybody. So that's what always like gets me.
Don't need everybody.
Well, okay. Well, if you needed everybody and you couldn't afford everybody, then your business model is broken.
Exactly. Then that means, there's something broken, right?
Yeah. And know it now and fix it now, because otherwise you're just going to backfill it with debt. And that's going to be a whole other issue than you have, other than a high labor cost.
Yeah. Yeah, broken business models they're so common, more common than people think. It's like you said, like the food truck guy wants to make $150,000. I get the same thing. I got a small little cafe. He's got like 20 seats. And I'll say, what are you estimating to do in sales? 3 million? What, 20 seats?
Wow. I mean, anything's possible, but let's take a look at the model and see what that means.
You're like Alenia and you're charging $200 a plate. Okay, that might work. You might make it happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. But how much is your food? How much is your guest check average? $15. The numbers don't work. That's gonna be
a lot of turns.
That's gonna be a lot of
24 hours in a day. Yeah.
Like you're gonna have to like walking by, taking people's plates from before they finish. Get out. All right, next, let's go.
Yep.
Yeah. The only time I've ever seen like a small restaurant, crank out huge numbers with a small restaurant was I did a consulting job back in the 90s in Telluride, Colorado, for a small restaurant called the Floridora. And the owner at the time, his name was Howard Stern, not the radio guy.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. But Howie was the master at French seating. He only had 50 seats at this little bitty restaurant. French seating is where he would, like, let's say he had a four top. There'd be a line at the door, right? There'd be a line at the door. He'd walk up and he had a four top. He goes, how many people in your party? 2? All right. Who's got a 2? Who's got a 2? You 2, come here. Let's go. Introduce them to each other. All right. And he'd sit them at the same table. He would see, every seat was always full. How many people you got in your party? 3? Who's a single? Who's a single? Who's a single? Come on, let's go. And he would pull them over and he would sit at one person at the table. Every seat was always full, because the most expensive thing in a restaurant is an empty seat. Howie understood this. He did this French seating where he just like sat everyone together and everyone got to be friends. And it actually really contributed to the atmosphere, because you got to meet some people from around the world. It was pretty cool.
Works.
It was a pretty cool concept.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I mean, you talk about doing like a small restaurant doing 400, 500 covers for lunch. It was only time the printer stopped is when it ran out of paper in the kitchen.
That's amazing. I love places like that. Oh, those are unicorns. They're great.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, I write about it in my very first book, Your Restaurant Sucks. I tell a little story about, because when he hired me, I went in and tried to change his menu, and he didn't like me changing this menu.
I bet.
So he was like, I want you to just help accentuate don't change my menu, because the menu's not broken. I just want you give me a couple different options. Don't do a radical, because you go in as a consultant thinking, I'm going to fix everything. And sometimes you don't need to fix shit. You just got to go in and listen to what's really,
I totally agree with that.
It's like the old joke of the guy, like machine's not working. Guy calls the service guy. Service guy looks at it, kicks it one time, writes the service bill, hands it to the guy, goes, $100. All you did was kick it. He goes, well, he goes, kicking it was free. I charged you $100 to know where to kick it.
I love that stuff.
That's consulting right there. Yeah. How come your fee's so high? It's you didn't do a lot. Well, it's because I knew where to kick it at. I
Yep.
knew where to kick it, where to kick you in the
Perfect.
butt. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look ahead and say, what emerging trends do you kind of see in the restaurant industry, and how should owners adapt to stay ahead financially?
So I have two different answers. So what I see as emerging trends and what I want to see are two very different things. So that's why I'm out here doing this. That's why I wrote the book. So
Exactly.
what I see as emerging is a lot of technology. And I am not anti-technology, no matter how old you think I am, Donald. I'm not anti-technology. I love it when it works. It's great.
Yeah.
And I love efficiencies, obviously. Of course, I'm a queen of efficiencies. But when it takes away the experience or any of the personal connection, and hospitality and restaurants is really all about the connection. I mean, you're going out with someone because you're going to connect with them or a group of people for a birthday or a holiday or a celebration of any kind. It's about connection. Even if you go, like I go out to eat by myself a lot. I travel a lot. And I sometimes just like to be by myself, get away from my kids. So I will go out and it's the connection with the bartender. So there's just a connection there. And I feel like that is getting lost. And then I really want to bring it back. And here's how I'm doing it. I'm going to tell you how I'm doing it right now. And on my small scale. So I became a little guest teacher at my local high school last year.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I went to them and I said, I want to come teach a class. And I was surprised they actually said yes. And I was going to do it on accounting, managerial accounting. But when I got into this class and I kind of got the feel for these kids and they were sophomores, juniors, and seniors, I thought they needed something more. Like none of them were thinking small business wise. They at that point, either they didn't know what they were going to go do or they thought they were going to get a job in a cubicle somewhere. Like they didn't, none of them really saw that there was a world out there that you could really love what you do and have an impact. Like none of them saw it. It's a big class, like 35 kids. So we started a business together. I actually went to the town. There was an abandoned concession stand, a snack shack at the athletic fields. Mm-hmm. So with this class, I said, we're going to start a business together. And we legit started this business. So we did the business plan. We got the supplies. We got the equipment. We learned how to use it. And then the day comes in April where we open. And we open and these kids come down and they work the shifts and they're like on their phone and they've got the back to like where people come up and order because they're chatting with their friend. And I'm just standing there. I'm like, guys, this is your community. Make eye contact, smile, ask the 8-year-old how his game just went. Like, this is communicate. This is your community here. Like and they're like, wait, what do you want us to do? I was like, okay. No, like, and so I started doing it and then I would like pull them like, no, like have a conversation. Like she's wearing a softball shirt. So then they're like, okay, you're weird. But then they started doing it. And I am telling you, Donald, the look, the smile on their faces of the reaction they were getting back from parents and from the kids. Like there was like this thing, I'm like having goosebumps telling you the story. There was this thing happening where they're like, oh my God, if I just smile and ask somebody how their day was, they can do it back to me. And now everybody's happy. What? And they're going to pay. They're going to tip me and I'm going to tip me. They were like, this is unbelievable. And so every weekend I would go down and work it with these kids. And I'd be like, this is about hospitality. This is how we're going to engage. We're going to make somebody's day every day. And this is how we're going to do it. And so I ended up, probably working with 150 kids down there. Wow. From spring throughout the summer. And every time it was like, this is how you communicate. This is called hospitality. We're just going to try and bring joy to everybody's day, as many people as we can. That's it. And we're going to do it through Skittles and Gatorade. Why not? So this is how and they loved it. And now people are like, they wrote me letters and they're like, I think I'm going to go into hospitality now, like the seniors. And I'm thinking, this is what's missing. This is what they need to understand. There is joy in hospitality. And I think a lot of it has been driven out of the industry because it's such a hard, grueling industry. And that's become the norm.
I would say, I hate to say, like a lot of those reality TV shows, like emphasize the stereotype.
Yes.
You're going to get yelled and screamed at. You're going to be called a donkey. We're going to just humiliate you. You're never going to see your family. Your goldfish is going to die because you're never going to go home.
Yep.
And so we've done a really great job of alienating people from wanting to join the restaurant industry, the hospitality industry, because we've created this divide ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's when
Absolutely.
I'm like you. I believe that we have to have this mission to bring the hospitality back to hospitality. You know,
Absolutely. And everybody wins when you do that. It's not like we're
Mhm.
saying, guys, you got to go run, a 10K. I mean, it's actually a win-win-win all the way around. I think
Exactly.
it's just been forgotten. I think that's as simple as that. It's just been
Mhm.
forgotten that
Has
that
been.
joy is a thing and that people go to restaurants because they're celebrating. Usually, there's
Mhm.
some type of celebration in there,
Yeah.
no matter what it is, and that's where joy comes. And if we could do that, if we can bring that back in a substantial way, that I feel like there will be a line of people waiting just to get into the industry. And then we'll have the pick of the litter in terms of employees, which I know there's a labor shortage. Like I understand like that's happening and it's a real thing. But if we can kind of change how people see our industry and what it's like to work in the industry, what it's like to make a career out of this, and really like who doesn't want to have a mission of bringing joy? Like, what's wrong with that? I want to
Exactly.
go to work every day and do that.
I want to put a challenge out to everybody, like listening to the podcast or watching the video on YouTube. I want to put a personal challenge out to everyone is please, you have to do a better job of marketing your culture.
Mm.
So many times when people are marketing on social media, you're showing me the same boring pictures of your food, which is nice, but it gets overdone. Show me your team having a good time. Show me your team having fun. Show me you training your team. Show me your team learning. Show me your team developing. Show me your team having a great time working in your restaurant. And that is going to start spreading that message back that the hospitality business is about hospitality. We're not going to treat you like dirt. We're not going to treat you like shit. We're not going to
Yep.
just take you for granted. And probably the most powerful thing you can do in a restaurant is one thing. Every day, make a promise to yourself, make a promise to your team that you never leave the restaurant without walking up to everyone on your team, looking them in the eye, shaking their hand, and saying the two most powerful words in human language. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you just put that out there. I think that is
It's huge.
awesome.
I think we
And
have to do
you're right. I mean, that will spread like wildfire if enough people will do that and put it out there, and it will change the face of what the industry is now. And this is interesting that you said that because it brings me back to like my early days with the Chart House, because the Chart House was very much about culture.
it.
I
Yeah.
mean, 1,000%. I remember at the Newport Chart House, there was a door before you walked in the back door into the dish area. That's how you enter the restaurant. It says, "Leave your bummer at the door." It was above
Ooh,
it,
that's
and it
good.
just said that, "Leave your bummer at the door." And even though you could roll your eyes or you might miss it after you've been there 100 times, whatever, it was ingrained in me, and I'm sure it was ingrained to everyone else because nobody ever dreaded working there. Like
Yeah.
you loved, everybody was on the same page. Everybody was there leaving their bummer at the door, and you're coming in and you're high-fiving. And man, I was the salad bar girl for a while, and you better believe that was the best looking salad bar in the world because I just loved being there. It was just
I
great. It
always
was
have
all about the culture.
Yeah, I always have all my clients, like you said, if they have closed kitchens, especially, a lot of times you're back in the kitchen, then you're going out through a door into the dining room. And I always have all my clients put on on the door or on the wall above the door, "You are on stage. Smile."
Oh, yes.
It's just as
Yep.
a reminder, as you're walking out that door, you're on stage and
Yep.
you got to smile every time you walk out that door. And I'm like you, like leave your bummer at the door. I use the same kind of analogy. I always say, leave your bags because everyone has emotional
Mm.
baggage.
Oh god, yeah, don't we all?
Everyone has
Yep.
emotional baggage, me
Mhm.
included. Everyone has
Mhm.
emotional baggage. We all have. If you don't have emotional baggage, you're not a human being. All right, that's what I
Yep.
like. Everyone has
Everyone
emotional
does,
baggage. You gotta
but
leave at the door and just
and
like
everyone yes,
leave
and
your baggage.
everyone can set it aside for a
Yeah.
time frame, and actually we'll all be better off, including yourself. So yeah.
And a lot of times I'll do this exercise when I do like group workshops. I'll tell you right now, if you took your problems, which you think are horrible, and you think they're overwhelming and just too much. If you took your piles and we'd have everyone in the room put all their problems in a pile, and I said, go back and pick out two problems. When you saw some other people's problems, you'd grab your problems and say, you know what? I'll take
That's
mine back.
actually a
Mine
great
aren't that bad.
analogy. Oh my god, that's another one I wanna write down.
I'll take. You know
Oh,
what? My problems aren't so bad, Casey.
yeah,
I think I'm fine with these two. I'm good. I'm good. Thanks,
so
though.
awesome.
Man, you're dealing with some crazy shit.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I would say right now, so if you need to contact Kasey, go to her website. It's www.profitfirst4restaurants.com. I'm going to put forward, we're it's almost December of 2023. We're heading into 2024. I would say 2 initiatives you want to do for 2024. Number 1, you got to do profit first for your restaurant. You have to do profit first for your restaurant. You got to change your mindset. Remember, the Saturday sales model is broken. I wrote that down. The Saturday sales model is broken. You got to take your profit out first. Pay yourself first. This is the only way you're going to really, really find that. I mean, talk about falling in love with your restaurant. You fall in love when you find that I'm making some money.
You do.
Yeah,
you do.
I love the restaurant when I'm making money.
Mm-hmm.
So number 1, 2024, first initiative, profit first, has to be at the top of your list. Number 2 initiative, I'm going to challenge everyone to do. Teach your team about financial independence. Teach your team about the number 1 problem I think that permeates the restaurant industry is financial illiteracy. People don't know how to manage their money. And that's why servers live paycheck to paycheck, tips to tips all the time, because they don't know how to budget their money. Take these tips that you're learning for profit first, teach them to your team, teach them how to manage their money. If nothing else, teach them just how to set up a simple budget and how to live within their budget. That will help you out so much. If you can get your team off the day-to-day, or paycheck to paycheck wagon they're on, this kind of hamster wheel they're stuck on. If you can get them off that hamster wheel and teach them about financial literacy, how to improve their credit score, how to get credit cards, how to use credit responsibly, not irresponsibly. You don't need that goddamn Louis Vuitton bag. If you're, well, you might need one.
You might get one if you have this. If you do profit first, you'll be able to buy as many as you want.
You get a lot of Louis Vuitton bags, but contact Kasey. Please reach out. If not, read. She has a great book out there. It's Profit First for Restaurants. She also has it on audiobook too, available. I have to give a shout out to one of my certified restaurant coaches. Her name's Fatima. She lives in Australia. Fatima is probably your biggest fan in the world.
I love her.
Your biggest fan. She has read your book 3 times.
She told me that. She
messaged
us on Instagram, and I love her.
Oh my God. She loves your book. In fact, she's the one who said, "Oh, you gotta have Kasey on your podcast."
Oh no, I love her even more.
So Fatima was so adamant. Her one thing that she wants to know is are you coming out with a book for profit first for restaurants for Australians? Because their tax system is so messed up that she needs you to help her. She's like, I really need help because the book is written for American taxes, and our taxes down here are so messed up. Our the way we do it, she goes, if you could just ask Kasey, could she write a book about profit first for Australians? It would be great.
That's awesome that she said that, because actually the woman that wrote Profit First for Tradies is Australian. I just met with her this past September at a conference. She's lovely. I love her. So maybe she'll help me do an addendum just for Australians, because I will say, because I can see the stats of who's downloading the audiobook. There's a lot of people in Australia who have downloaded and purchased the book. I was like, wow, who knew? I've never been. I guess I'm going to have to come that way.
Yeah,
I'm coming to you.
I have books out and I have audiobooks. I find my audiobook sales do so much better than my paperback books.
Oh, mine are the audio is starting to surpass the paperback now.
Crazy. Yeah. So here's the thing: if you don't like to read, I know I have a lot of members in my coaching program that don't like to read.
Oh, I'm sure.
She does have the audiobook. All right.
Yep, that's right.
Profit First for Restaurants. Okay,
Profit
go find
First
her.
For Restaurants.
Right?
Yes.
Or if you go to her website, profitfirst4restaurants.com. Reach out to Kasey. If nothing else, just have a conversation with her. She'd be more than happy to talk to you, see what your situation is. She can help you.
Yep.
Of course, it's an investment, but here's an investment I think is always well worth, because anytime you invest in something like that, it's like marketing. A lot of people say, "Oh, marketing is an expense." No, marketing is an investment if you do it right. It's an expense if you do it bad.
It should be an investment. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I say that too.
It is an expense if you do it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You just throw money on stupid posts and just boosting posts to get likes and not really targeting an audience that's really going to actually convert into guests and butts and seats. Same thing. Mm-hmm. You need to invest in someone who's going to help you grow your brand and help you grow your profits.
Yep.
Probably the best advice I got when I had my first restaurant, and I was failing my first restaurant, but I was very lucky. I got a business mentor, a business coach who turned me around. And the best advice he ever gave me is this: never go cheap on accountants and lawyers.
Actually, I agree with both that, and I've never heard anyone say that, but I totally agree with that.
Never go cheap on accountants or lawyer. They will save you so much money if you invest in a good accountant and a good lawyer.
This is true. Yeah.
So Kasey, I want to say thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank
you. Know what?
This
Yeah.
is
So
awesome.
again, if you guys need to reach out to Kasey, profit first 4 restaurants.com. I'll put the link in the show notes. You can reach out to her anytime you like. Head over to Amazon, grab her book, Profit First for Restaurants. If you like audio, go to Audible, download her audio book, Profit First for Restaurants. It is a fantastic. I've already read her book once. I haven't read like Fatima 3 times, but I read it once. And I listened to her audiobook too. I'm a huge audiobook freak.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I have 880 audiobooks on file. Yeah.
Okay. Got me beat. Wow.
I'm an audiobook fanatic. I listen to audiobooks all the time. Awesome. You know what? And I should talk to you. We should talk about having you out. I have an annual summit every year in Phoenix.
Oh, I love Phoenix.
Yeah. So every October we do a 3-day restaurant success summit. I should have you come out and do a session at the restaurant success summit. I think all my people would love that.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Definitely.
So hey, it's on. So look for Kasey at the 2024 Restaurant Success Summit. It's gonna be October. I'm pretty sure it's October 21st, 22nd, 23rd in Scottsdale, Arizona.
I'd love to be there. Amazing. Awesome. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Kasey. Again, anybody has any problems or needs anything, please, you can always reach out to me, donald@therestaurantcoach.com. Also, if you don't know, I have a new coaching program launching in January called Warrior Restaurants. It is coming out with a new book I have called Savage Restaurant Success, and also with a new podcast. And it's basically this whole Warrior Restaurants program is about coaching about what we call as the core 4. It's not about just business. We're going to talk about having the whole have it all lifestyle. I'm going to coach you on having the body, the being, the balance, and the business also. So look forward to that. You can go to apply right now at warriorrestaurants.com, and that's starting in January. So Kasey, thanks for being here. I appreciate you so much. It's great talking to you, and we'll keep this conversation going in the future.
I hope so. Thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Awesome.